My husband told me his brother died fighting his demons. He lied. Julian didn't just die. He was silenced. I found the note he left for me, tucked inside the liner of his old boot. It was a map that unraveled 7 years of my marriage and $1 million lie. I learned the real demon wasn't the one Julian fought, but the one I was married to. My name is Ilara. I am 35 years old, and I am a historian, an archivist, specifically, at the Northwood University Institute. My life is spent sorting, preserving, and understanding the past. I handle brittle paper and fading ink. I find truth in the margins of forgotten ledgers. It is methodical work. It is quiet. It is nothing like this. Julian's apartment was suffocating. It smelled of stale cigarettes, old pizza, and the specific kind of despair that clings to upholstery. It had been 3 weeks since my brother-in-law died. The official ruling was accidental overdose, a tragic, lonely end in this 5th-floor walk-up. My husband, Marcus, hadn't shed a tear. He had refused to come. "Just pack the crap, Ilara," he'd said over the phone, his voice clipped and distant. He was a waste, and I don't have time for it. Marcus was always busy. This time, it was an urgent business trip, so I was here alone, sorting through the artifacts of his brother's failed life. I felt a hollow pity for Julian, but beneath it, a sharp, cold resentment for my husband's indifference. I worked like I always do with methodical detachment. I labeled boxes, photographs, clothing, kitchenware. I left his boots for last. They were old, worn-down work boots, the kind you might see on a ranch, not in the city. They felt out of place, just as Julian had. They were caked in mud I did not recognize. As I went to stuff newspaper into the toe of the left boot, my fingers brushed against a loose seam in the liner. A pocket. My archivist's curiosity, the instinct to look closer, took over. I pulled the seam, and a small, tightly folded square of paper fell onto the dusty floor. It was cheap notebook paper, gritty with dirt. My name was scrawled on the outside, in Julian's shaky, desperate handwriting. Ilara. I unfolded it. My hands began to tremble before I even read the words. Ilara, don't trust him. He didn't sell the ranch. He stole it. The sale was a fake. He's been bleeding the accounts for years. Him and Brooke. He's poisoning you. Those vitamins. Check the well. The air left my lungs. The words swam, refusing to focus. Marcus, Brooke. My blood ran cold, turning to ice in my veins. Brooke Hartley, the real estate agent from my hometown, Coyote Creek, Wyoming, the smiling, sharp woman who had handled the sale of my family's ranch 2 years ago. The ranch was mine, my inheritance, the only thing my father left me. Marcus had convinced me to sell. He had called it an anchor, a piece of the past holding us back. He found an anonymous developer, he said, who offered a price that would secure our future. I am a historian. I live in the past. Marcus lived in the present in spreadsheets, projections, and finances I never understood. I trusted him. I signed the papers he put in front of me. The woman trained to verify every source, barely glanced at the documents concerning my own legacy, and the vitamins, my fatigue. For the last year, maybe more, I had been exhausted. A constant, heavy fog settled over my mind. My hair was thinning. "You're just run down," Marcus would say, his voice smooth and concerned. Every morning, he'd place a single chalky pill in my palm. "For your energy," he'd murmur. My special blend. I swallowed it. Every morning, I felt the bile rise in my throat. I suddenly wanted to scrape my tongue raw. I read the note again, the paper crinkling in my tightening fist. "Check the well. He's poisoning you. Julian. He was not just a waste. He knew. He must have found something, maybe in the accounts. Maybe he overheard them." The realization hit me not like a wave, but like a pre-autopsy incision cold, precise and fatal. Julian did not just accidentally overdose. This note was not just a warning. It was a message from a man who knew he was about to be murdered. He knew Marcus and Brooke would not let him live with what he knew. This piece of paper was his last desperate act. A dead man's testimony tucked into the one place he knew his brother, Marcus, would never look. I dropped the boot. I stumbled back, knocking over a box of Julian's old paperbacks. The room was spinning. The smell of stale cigarettes was now the smell of death. I could not breathe. I grabbed my purse and the note, stuffing it deep into my pocket. I ran from the apartment. I did not lock the door. I did not close it. I fled down the 5 flights of stairs, hitting the street and gulping at the cold city air. My world, the carefully curated archive of my life, had just been completely, irrevocably shattered. I did not go home. Home was not safe. Home was the house I shared with Marcus, the kitchen where he handed me the small, chalky pills. I drove until the city lights faded, finally stopping at a sterile, anonymous hotel by the highway. I paid cash. Inside room 214. I bolted the door and leaned against it, Julian's note burning a hole in my pocket. I fumbled in my purse for the small amber bottle of vitamins I always carried. I walked to the bathroom, twisted the child-proof cap, and emptied the contents into the toilet bowl. I watched the white pills dissolve, a cloud of betrayal in the water. I flushed, and then flushed again, as if I could erase the last 2 years. My hands were shaking, but my mind, for the first time in months, felt sharp. The fog was lifting, replaced by a terrible, cold clarity. I was an archivist. I dealt in facts. I needed facts. First, I needed time. I called Sarah, my colleague at the Institute. Her voice was warm, normal. It felt like a lifetime ago. Sarah, I started, forcing a tremor into my voice. It's Alara. There's been a family emergency. I paused, letting the silence hang. It's bad. I need to take some time. A week, maybe more. I have to go completely off the grid. Can you cover for me? Sarah, kind, efficient Sarah, didn't hesitate. My God, Alara, of course. Don't think about work. Just, are you okay? I could hear the real fear in her voice, a fear that mirrored my own. I will be. I lied. Thank you. I hung up and opened my laptop. The hotel Wi-Fi was slow. I logged into our joint bank accounts, the accounts Marcus managed. The sale of the ranch had been for a significant sum, millions. It was our nest egg, our secure future. I looked at the balance. It was gone. Not just low. It was practically empty. My blood froze. I clicked on the transaction history. My historian's eye, trained to see patterns, scanned the page. It was not a robbery. It was an excavation. Enormous, regular transfers. $50,000, $100,000, month after month, starting almost immediately after the sale. The recipient was always the same Bighorn Holdings, LLC. I had never heard that name. My fingers flew. A new tab. The Wyoming Secretary of State Business Database. I typed in the name. Bighorn Holdings, LLC. The page loaded. It was a legal entity, active and in good standing, and the registered agent, the name listed as the sole contact, was Brooke Hartley. Brooke, the smiling realtor, the hometown girl who had assured me the anonymous developers would respect the land. I dug into my own digital archives, the cloud server where I kept scanned copies of everything important. I found the sale documents. I read every word, my stomach churning. Ilara, the meticulous historian who could date parchment by its grain, had barely skimmed them. I had trusted Marcus. I had trusted his financial savvy, his confidence, his promises. The buyer's name on the contract was Coyote Creek Holdings, a separate entity, but the closing statements showed the funds being routed, managed, and dispersed by Bighorn. I had signed it all. I had to hear his voice. I had to know. I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring, his voice like warm honey. Hey, babe, how's the apartment coming? Still wading through Julian's junk. I closed my eyes. It's slow. Marcus. Well, don't overdo it. This deal I'm on is taking longer than I thought. I should be home in a few days. He paused, his tone shifting to that familiar, tender concern. You sound tired. Ilara, make sure you're taking your vitamins. You know you get foggy when you skip them. A spike of pure ice went through my heart. It was not a question. It was a threat. A casual, loving, monstrous threat. He was poisoning me from afar. I will, I whispered and hung up. I immediately logged into my health insurance portal, my medical records. I scrolled back 2 years, visit after visit. Patient complains of persistent fatigue. Discussing patient's brain fog and memory lapses. Patient concerned about accelerated hair loss. The dates were undeniable. My mystery illness. The decline Marcus had blamed on stress and getting older began exactly 1 month after I signed the papers. The vitamins were not vitamins. They were poison. A low, steady dose meant to keep me quiet, compliant, and stupid. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying speed. The business trip was a lie. He was not in some boardroom. He was in Coyote Creek. He was with Brooke. They were probably at the ranch, my ranch, finalizing the next stage of their plan. The real sale. The one Julian's note mentioned. The fatigued woman who had walked into Julian's apartment was gone. In her place was a historian with a research project, a daughter with a stolen legacy. I opened an incognito browser window. I booked the next flight to Wyoming. I was not going back as Ilara, the confused wife. I was going back as a grieving daughter, ready to dig up a grave. Flying into Wyoming felt like traveling backward in time, but the nostalgia that usually greeted me was gone, replaced by a sick, metallic dread. I rented a nondescript sedan at the airport, paying cash, and drove the 2 hours to Coyote Creek. I did not drive to the ranch. I did not drive past Brooke's pristine office on Main Street. I checked into the Antelope Inn, a small, run-down motel on the edge of town, again paying cash. The room smelled like pine cleaner and stale beer. For an hour, I just sat on the stiff comforter, Julian's note flat on my lap. The well? He stole it. Him and Brooke. When darkness fell, I drove. I took the old county highway, my headlights cutting through a familiar, oppressive blackness. When I turned onto the gravel road leading to my family's land, my heart hammered against my ribs. I cut the engine a 1/4 mile out and walked the rest. The silhouette of the house, my house, stood against the stars, but it felt wrong. Marcus had told me the developers were letting it sit, letting the land rest before they broke ground. But the fences were new. I could smell the fresh-cut pine of the posts. The barbed wire was taut and gleaming. Parked near the barn, I could see the outline of 2 new, heavy-duty trucks. It was not abandoned, but it was not being developed. It was being occupied. I retreated, a ghost on my own property, and drove back to the motel. There was only one person in this town I could trust. Leo and I had built forts in the creek beds and sworn blood oaths under the cottonwoods. Now, he was Leo Tanner, Esquire, a name I'd seen on local papers for his work fighting predatory land developers. I called his private cell. Leo, I said, my voice thick. It's Ilara. I'm in town, and I am in terrible trouble. We met an hour later, not at his office, but at the 24-hour diner. We sat in a back booth that smelled of burnt coffee. Leo's face, once all youthful mischief, was now sharper, edged with a lawyer's skepticism. But when he saw my eyes, his expression softened. Ilara, what in God's name is wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Worse, I said. I slid Julian's note across the table. He read it. Then he read it again, his skepticism hardening into a cold fury I recognized from our childhood. M is Marcus, I whispered. Brooke is Brooke Hartley. I laid out the bank statements I'd printed at the hotel, showing the transfers. I showed him the LLC registration. Leo was quiet for a long time. He ran a hand through his hair. Jesus, Alara. He looked around the diner, then leaned in. Brooke, for the last 18 months, she's been buying up distressed properties all over the valley. Farms going under, water rights auctions. No one knew where she was getting the capital. We all just thought she'd landed a big out-of-state investor. He pulled out his laptop. Marcus told you he sold the ranch to an anonymous developer. Yes, for our future. He managed everything. Leo typed, his fingers flying across the keys with practiced speed. He was in the county assessor's database. Okay, here's your parcel. The old Miller Ranch. He turned the laptop toward me. Ilara, your ranch was never sold to a developer. What? It was transferred 2 years ago. Look at the sale price. My eyes focused on the number. $1. It was transferred for $1 to Bighorn Holdings LLC. To Brooke. But I signed sale papers. I saw the money in our account. He created a phantom sale. Ilara, a complex fake. He had you sign papers that likely transferred the deed to his partner's LLC for nothing, while he moved sale money from one of your other accounts to make it look legitimate. It was a shell game. He didn't sell it. He stole it. My breath hitched. The ranch was gone, stolen for $1. But Julian's note, and the mention of the bleeding accounts, signaled that this was bigger. Wait, Leo said, his eyes narrowing. There's more. He clicked through more databases, his legal mind following a trail I couldn't see. After Bighorn Holdings took possession, he went silent. Leo, what is it? He finally looked at me, and his face was pale. Ilara, 5 days after Bighorn acquired your land, they filed a new deed. They partitioned the property. They kept the land, but they sold the rights. What rights? All of them. Mineral rights. Water rights, everything below the surface. They sold them to a corporation I've never heard of. Apex Drilling. He pointed to the screen. They sold them for $15 million. The diner faded. $15 million. The missing money wasn't just my inheritance. It was the blood of the land itself. And then, Julian's final warning echoed in my head. Check the well. Oh my God, I whispered, clutching the table. He's not just selling the water, is he, Leo? That's why Julian mentioned the well. They're poisoning it. Apex Drilling. They're poisoning the water, just like Marcus was poisoning me. Leo's expression was grim. Apex. It's an energy corp. They're likely fracking or strip mining or God knows what. And by selling the rights, Brooke and Marcus have indemnified themselves, leaving the LLC to take the fall when the environmental damage surfaces. He closed the laptop. The friendly childhood eyes were gone, replaced by the lawyer. He is not getting away with this, Leo said, his voice flat and cold. None of them are. What do? We freeze them. Right now. I'm going to my office. I am drafting an emergency petition, a lis pendens. It's a notice of a pending lawsuit. I'll file it with the county clerk the second they open in the morning. It will cloud the title on your ranch so badly that Bighorn, Apex, and anyone else involved can't sell it, can't borrow against it, can't do anything. It locks the battlefield. And then, I asked. And then, Leo said, sliding out of the booth, you, the archivist, are going to find me the proof that ties Marcus directly to Brooks LLC and this Apex deal. We need the weapon that proves the conspiracy. We need to find the real contract. Leo's legal maneuver had bought me time, but it was only a defense. I needed the offense. I needed the undeniable proof that linked Marcus directly to Bighorn Holdings. The lis pendens was a cloud over the title. I needed to bring the lightning strike that vaporized it. The source of that lightning was Brooke Hartley. I spent the next day watching her office from my car, parked 3 blocks away, my binoculars steady. Coyote Creek Realty was on Main Street, a charming, sand-blasted brick building. It was the hub of the town's gossip and commerce, and she was the spider at its center. I watched ranchers and bankers come and go. I ate stale crackers and drank lukewarm water, feeling the fog in my head continue to clear. The absence of the poison was making me sharp, but it also made me angry. At 6 p.m., she locked the front door. I tensed, but she didn't leave. A minute later, a man walked out of the alley beside the building and got into her parked SUV. It was Marcus, my husband. He looked relaxed, smiling, wearing a jacket I'd bought him for Christmas. He put his arm around her as she got into the driver's seat, pulling her close for a kiss. It was not the kiss of a business partner. It was practiced, intimate. As they drove off, heading toward the Steerhorn, the town's one expensive steakhouse, I moved. I walked down the alley. In the small private garage behind her office, hidden from the street, sat his black sedan. The car he had, just 2 days ago, told me was parked in long-term parking at an airport 1,000 miles away. The arrogance of it, the sheer lazy arrogance, stole my breath. He thought I was sick. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was at home, organizing his dead brother's junk. I looked at the back door to her office. The building was old, built in the 1930s. The lock was a simple pin and tumbler, the kind a cheap landlord would install. In my work as an archivist, I don't just handle paper. I handle antique wooden boxes, delicate metal clasps, and small, complex mechanisms that have been rusted shut for a century. My hands are steady. My touch is precise. I had brought a small set of picks from the motel, tools I used for restoring delicate lockboxes. I inserted the tension wrench, feeling the cylinder. I applied pressure. I probed with the pick. The first pin clicked, the second, the fifth. The lock turned. I was inside in less than 40 seconds. The air was thick with a cloying vanilla perfume. I moved directly to her desk. Her computer was on, sleeping. I tapped the mouse. A password screen. I looked at her desk. A silver frame held a picture of a smiling golden retriever. Bighorn 1, invalid. Apex 123, invalid. I zoomed in on the photo on my phone. The dog's tag was visible. Barnaby. I typed Barnaby 1. The computer unlocked. It was a gold mine. My historian's training took over. This was an archive of a conspiracy, and I was its curator. I didn't browse. I searched. My first search was for Apex drilling. A folder appeared. Inside Apex Mineral Contract Final, PDF. I opened it. My eyes scanned the legal jargon, the clauses and subclauses, until I found the signature page, page 12. The sale of all mineral and water rights on my family's land for $15 million, signed by Brooke Hartley, President, Bighorn Holdings, and signed by Marcus, listed as a silent partner. I had him. I went to her email. I searched my own name. The historian. A thread between her and Marcus, dated 6 months ago. Brooke. She's getting foggier. The new dose is working. She hasn't asked about the accounts in a month. Marcus. My little historian, too busy with her dead books to notice her husband is robbing her blind. Just a little longer. We close the Apex deal, transfer the funds, and she can have her dirt back. I felt a cold, black rage fill my chest. I kept digging. A folder labeled Travel. Inside Cayman Exit Plan, PDF. Flight confirmations. 2 first-class, one-way tickets to Grand Cayman. The flight was scheduled for 2 days from now, the day after Marcus was due home. I had enough. I was ready to leave. But a different folder caught my eye. Insurance. Why would a realtor have a folder labeled insurance? I clicked it. One file. Julian Policy, PDF. I opened it. My heart stopped. It was a life insurance policy. Insured Julian. Policy date 3 months ago. Payout $250,000. The sole beneficiary Marcus. He hadn't just let his brother die. He had profited from it. The accidental overdose was a meticulously planned murder for $250,000. My hands were shaking. The email mentioned the new dose. I looked around the office. Under the desk, flush against the wall, was a small gray square, a hidden safe. Arrogance. I typed in Marcus's birthday. The light turned green. The safe clicked open. Inside wads of cash, 2 fake passports, their pictures, different names, and a small, amber-colored vial, identical to the one Marcus kept in our medicine cabinet. The vitamins. I left the cash. I left the passports. I took the vial. I pulled out my phone. I photographed every single document, the contract, the signatures, the emails, the flight plans, the insurance policy. I photographed the contents of the safe, my phone, connected to the hotel Wi-Fi I'd spoofed, silently uploaded every image to a secure, encrypted cloud server. I wiped the keyboard, the mouse, the safe keypad. I put the vial in my pocket. I slipped out the back door, pulling it shut. The lock clicked, settling back into place. I walked, not ran, back to my car, the vial heavy in my pocket. I had the poison. I had the proof. I had everything. I had the digital proof, the contracts, the emails, the insurance policy. I had the vial of poison from the safe, but Julian's note had one last command. Check the well. The well was the heart of the ranch. It was the reason my family had survived droughts that bankrupted our neighbors. It was the one thing my father told me to never, ever let go of. I waited until 2 in the morning, when the town was dead and the moon was a sharp sliver. I drove the rental sedan, not to the main road, but to a service cutoff a mile south of my property. I parked in a dense stand of juniper and started walking. I knew this land. I had roamed these hills my entire childhood. I was the ghost here, and I knew every shadow. I skirted the main house. The lights were off. Marcus and Brooke were asleep inside, dreaming of their Cayman Islands getaway, oblivious to the fact that their world was about to end. I moved past the barn, the new trucks gleaming ominously, and headed for the eastern pasture, where the old windmill stood over the wellhead. I smelled it before I saw it. A sharp, chemical reek, like burnt plastic and solvents. It was a smell that did not belong in the clean, sage-scented air of Wyoming. As I got closer, the metallic creak of the windmill was drowned out by a low, mechanical thrum. A generator. Under the moonlight, the scene was a nightmare. The area around the well was a construction site. Apex drilling trucks were parked in a dark cluster. Pipes and heavy machinery lay scattered like the bones of metal dinosaurs. But the worst part was the barrels. Dozens of 55-gallon drums, stacked carelessly, some on their sides. A dark, oily liquid was seeping from a cluster of them, a black ooze that soaked into the dry ground, heading straight for the wellhead. This was not just drilling. This was dumping. This was not just fraud. This was a deliberate poisoning of the aquifer, the single source of water for every farm, every ranch, every family for 50 miles down the valley. My personal betrayal felt small, almost insignificant, next to this. This was a scar on the land that could never heal. They were not just stealing the water, they were murdering it. I understood. They would drill, extract whatever minerals they could, poison the land beyond repair. And then, as Leo said, the shell company would declare bankruptcy, leaving the $15 million safe in their pockets and a toxic wasteland for me and my neighbors. My rage was so cold, it felt like an anesthetic. I pulled 2 evidence-grade sample jars from my backpack. I scraped a sample of the viscous sludge from the ground. Then, I moved to the wellhead itself, found the spigot, and filled the second jar with the gray, chemical-laced water. I screwed the lids on, my hands steady. I had it. All of it. Hold it right there. The voice was harsh, and the beam of a high-powered flashlight blinded me. I froze. A man in a dark uniform stepped out from behind an Apex truck. Private security. "You're on private property. Drop the bag." I did not drop the bag. I turned and ran. I ran not toward my car, but toward the hills. He was younger, maybe faster, but he was a stranger here. I was a daughter of this land. I scrambled up the familiar shale of the first ridge, the flashlight beam sweeping wildly behind me. He was yelling, his voice muffled by the wind. I plunged into the darkness of the high country. I knew every game trail, every washout, every cut in the earth. He was crashing through brush, following the noise, but I moved silently, my feet finding the paths I had known since I was 6 years old. I could hear his heavy breathing, the snap of twigs as he stumbled. I slid, half falling, into a deep, dry creek bed, the one Leo and I had called the canyon. I pressed myself against the cold rock of the embankment, tucking myself under an overhang of juniper roots. I controlled my breathing, silencing it, letting the cold air burn my lungs. The flashlight beam cut across the top of the embankment, just feet above my head. He stopped. Listening, I could hear his boots crunching on the gravel. He was right above me. I could smell his sweat and the cheap tobacco on his clothes. I held my breath. The beam swept back and forth. He cursed, a low, angry sound. After what felt like an eternity, he moved on, his light disappearing over the next ridge. I waited. I counted to 500. Only then did I allow myself to move. I did not go back the way I came. I followed the creek bed for a mile, a dark artery in the land, until it let me out onto the county road, far from my car, far from the ranch. I walked the 4 miles back to the motel, caked in mud, my hands scraped raw, the chemical smell clinging to my clothes. The samples were safe in my bag. I looked back at the hills, my hills, where Marcus and Brooke slept. They had not just wanted money. They were willing to burn everything, my health, my land, the entire valley to get it. They had underestimated me. They had forgotten that I was born in the very wilderness they were trying to poison. I met Leo at dawn, not at the diner, but at a deserted boat launch by the reservoir. I had not slept. I was still wearing the clothes from the night, stained with mud and the sharp chemical stench. I looked like a ghost, and I felt like one. I handed him the 2 sealed sample jars and the small amber vial from Brooke's safe. "This is it, Leo," I said, my voice a dry rasp. "This is the well, and this is what he has been giving me." Leo took them, his knuckles white. He did not say anything, just nodded, his face a mask of cold fury. He placed them in a padded evidence bag. "Get these tested," I said, privately, urgently. "I need to know what they are." "I have a friend at the county DA's office," Leo said, his voice low. "Ana Ramirez. She's the only one in that office I'd trust with this. This just went nuclear. Alara, this is not just fraud anymore. This is conspiracy, massive environmental endangerment, and attempted murder, not to mention Julian." He looked at the vial. "This is the proof she needs. She'll run the tests through the state crime lab, off the books, until we're ready." He was already walking to his car. "Go back to the motel. Lock the door. Do not go out. I'll handle this." I sat in the motel room, the curtains drawn, the cheap air conditioner rattling. The trap was set, but I needed one more piece of bait. I had to confirm his timeline. I had to record the lie. I opened the recording app on my laptop. As my control sample, I pulled up an old voicemail from our anniversary, one he'd left me a year ago, his voice full of that false, practiced love. It would be my baseline, my voice print control. I dialed his number. He picked up on the 3rd ring, his voice sharp and annoyed. "Alara, I'm busy." I let my voice crack. I summoned the foggy, weak wife he'd spent 2 years meticulously creating. "Marcus, I'm sorry. I'm almost done at Julian's apartment." I let out a small, rehearsed sob. "It's just so sad. All his things. It's just so much." The sigh on his end was pure impatience. "Look, I know. It's a mess. But this deal here is taking longer than I thought. It's complicated. I'm handling it." "When will you be home?" I asked. The perfect needy wife. "I just miss you." 2 days. he snapped. "I'll be home in 2 days, and this will all be over. We can finally move on. Just finish with the apartment. I'll see you then." He hung up. I stopped the recording. The lie was sloppy, arrogant. This will all be over. He was not coming home. He was flying to the Caymans. I saved the file. Marcus Lie Wav. I saved the anniversary message. Marcus baseline, Wav. Voice print evidence. An archivist's specialty. The call from Leo came late that afternoon. I snatched the burner phone. "Talk to me," I said. The lab rushed it. Leo's voice was tight, vibrating with rage. "Anna put a priority on it. The vial from the safe. It's a custom compounded cocktail. Heavy metals, a low-dose arsenic derivative, and a hypnotic agent. It is designed to mimic chronic fatigue and induce cognitive impairment. It's rat poison in a suit. And my vitamins. I had kept 3 pills I'd pretended to take, hiding them weeks ago. I sent a courier for them this morning. The lab confirmed. The trace elements match. It's the same signature. Ilera. It is a perfect match. He was actively, methodically poisoning you." I closed my eyes. The validation was a cold, sharp pain. "The well?" "Worse," Leo said. "The water sample is saturated with an illegal drilling solvent. It is banned in 30 states. It's highly carcinogenic. The sludge is the same, just concentrated. Ana Ramirez she is apoplectic. And it gets better," Leo continued, his voice dripping with acid. "I spent the morning digging into Apex Drilling. It does not really exist. It's not a real energy corporation. What is it? It's a terminal shell company, a corporate black hole. It's registered in Delaware, owned by another shell company in Panama. It's designed for one purpose: to absorb the $15 million mineral rights payment, hold the toxic liability, and then, in about 6 months, declare catastrophic bankruptcy. Marcus and Brooke would have the money, and the state of Wyoming and you, as the original landowner, would be left with $1 billion environmental cleanup and a dead valley. It is the most sociopathic land-flipping scheme I have ever seen." "So what happens now?" I asked, my voice steady. "Now, it's out of our hands, mostly. The DA's office is fully in. Anna is securing the warrants as we speak. Arrest warrants for Marcus and Brooke, conspiracy to commit fraud, felony environmental contamination, wire fraud, and she is adding attempted murder for Marcus, the insurance policy on Julian, combined with the poison. She is confident she can get a grand jury indictment for his murder, too." "Good," I said. "When will they arrest them?" "Tomorrow morning, likely." Leo said. "A quiet pickup. They'll send a car to the ranch before dawn." "No." The word was out before I could think. "No, Ilara. This is a criminal case. It's not." "They do not get a quiet arrest. Leo, they do not get to be shuffled away in the dark." I thought of the emails, my little historian. I thought of my ranch, my water. I thought of Julian, dying alone in that filthy apartment. They did this in the dark. They have to be exposed in the light. They humiliated me. They are poisoning our neighbors. The town deserves to see who did this to them. There was a long pause. "What are you proposing?" Leo asked. "Where will they be tomorrow? They fly out the day after. They'll be celebrating." Leo hesitated. Then I heard him typing. "Damn. Brooke is the keynote speaker at the Coyote Creek Development Summit tomorrow afternoon at the community hall. A vanity project she is funding to crown herself the town's savior." "Perfect," I said. "That is where we do it. In front of everyone they lied to. Ilara, that is a public spectacle. The DA will not—" "The DA will," I said, the ice in my voice surprising even myself. "Tell Ana Ramirez that if she wants a conviction, she needs a star witness, and the star witness wants to set the stage." The Coyote Creek Community Hall was packed. The vinyl chairs scraped against the linoleum floor, and the air was thick with the smell of cheap coffee and BBQ from the potluck. Brooke's Land Development Summit was a masterpiece of self-congratulation. A huge banner hung behind the stage, bearing her smiling face and the words, "Brooke Hartley building our bright future." The entire town was here. Farmers in clean shirts, ranchers in their good boots, small business owners, the mayor. They were here to listen to the woman who had, in less than 2 years, become the town's biggest benefactor, its financial rainmaker. And in the front row, looking up at her with a face of supportive, loving adoration, sat my husband, Marcus. Brooke was at the podium, her voice amplified, dripping with false sincerity. "It is not just about development," she was saying. "It is about preserving the spirit of Coyote Creek, about ensuring a prosperous future for our children." I had spent the morning at the motel, not hiding, but preparing. I was no longer the tired, sick wife. I was an archivist, and this was my presentation. The fog was gone. I was clear. I was cold, and I was, for the first time in my life, truly dangerous. Leo had coordinated with Ana Ramirez. The DA had a plainclothes deputy inside and 2 more outside. The audio-visual technician, a friend of Leo's, had my laptop plugged into the main projector. I walked in through the back doors. The room was focused on the stage, so no one noticed me at first. I walked steadily down the center aisle. A few people turned. I heard a gasp, a whisper. "Isn't that Alara Miller?" I kept walking. I saw Marcus's head turn. His smile faltered. The adoration in his eyes turned to pure, confused shock. He half rose from his seat. Brooke, blinded by the stage lights, faltered in her speech. "A future where we—" I did not slow down. I walked up the 3 steps to the stage, my boots loud on the hollow wood. I walked directly to the podium. Brooke stared at me, her mouth open. "Ilara, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be—" I took the microphone from its stand. She tried to grab it, her hand shaking. I gripped it tightly and turned to face the crowd. I turned to face my husband. "Brooke, Marcus," I said. My voice was amplified, clear as a bell, and did not shake. "I am so glad you are both here. I just have one question about this bright future you are planning." The room was utterly silent. Marcus was frozen, halfway out of his chair. "Does this future," I continued, "involve the illegal carcinogenic drilling solvents from a company called Apex Drilling that you are currently, as we speak, dumping directly into our aquifer?" A collective intake of breath. A low murmur started in the crowd. Marcus's face went white. Brooke was speechless, her eyes wide with panic. "I see you're confused," I said, turning to the technician. "Let me help." The projector screen behind Brooke, the one meant for her slideshow on property values, flickered. The first image appeared. It was the Bighorn Holdings registration, with Brooke's name. The next image, the deed transfer. My ranch. Sold for $1. "Many of you know me," I said, my voice ringing with authority. "You knew my father. You know he left me the ranch. What you do not know is that my husband, Marcus, and Brooke Hartley stole it from me." The crowd erupted. Marcus shouted, "She's lying. She's sick. She doesn't know what she's saying. I was sick. Marcus," I said, my eyes locking on his. "But I stopped taking the vitamins you were giving me." The next image hit the screen. It was the $15 million contract. The real contract. The sale of my mineral and water rights to Apex Drilling. I zoomed in on the signature page. Brooke Hartley and Marcus. Silent partner. $15 million, I said to the crowd of farmers. "That is what your health is worth to them. That is the price of your children's water." The final slide. The flight confirmations. 2 first-class tickets to the Cayman Islands. For tomorrow. This was their exit plan, I announced. They were going to take the money, poison the land, and leave us, all of us, to clean up the mess and pay for the funerals. You, Brooke stammered, backing away from the podium. "But the worst part," I said, my voice dropping, "is what they did to keep this secret." I pressed a button on my laptop. It was not a slide. It was an audio file. Julian's voice, thin, terrified, and desperate, filled the hall. It was the voicemail, the one he'd left Marcus, the one I'd found in his deleted items folder in the cloud. Marcus, you can't do this. You can't. Poisoning her. Poisoning the land. This is not just theft. It's, you are going to kill someone. Call me back, man. We have to stop this. The audio clicked off. The silence that followed was heavier than a gravestone. Marcus roared. It was not a word, but a sound of pure animal rage. He lunged for the stage, knocking over his chair. You witch, he screamed. He never made it. 2 ranchers from the front row, men whose land neighbored mine, men who had just realized why their cattle were sick, stood up. They did not just block him, they seized him. One man grabbed his shirt, the other his arm, and they slammed him back against the wall before he could take a single step toward me. The microphone was heavy in my hand. Marcus was struggling against the ranchers, his face purple with rage. I looked past him, at the whole room, at my neighbors, and then my eyes settled back on my husband. Julian knew, I said, and this time my voice did crack. Just once. But it came back stronger, echoing in the hall. He knew you were poisoning me, Marcus. He knew you were poisoning the land. He knew because you brought him into it, and he couldn't live with it. I looked directly into Marcus's eyes. He tried to warn me. He tried to stop you, and you killed him for it. The last image hit the projector screen. It was the life insurance policy. Julian's name. Marcus's name as the sole beneficiary. The payout $250,000. The policy date 3 days before his accidental overdose. A gasp went through the crowd, louder this time, turning into a growl. That's not all. A man's voice roared from the back. It was Hank Miller, whose ranch was downstream from mine. My cattle have been sick for a month. I thought it was a bad feed, but it's the water you poisoned my herd. You son of a... The room exploded. People were standing, shouting, all the simmering anxiety of a hard year, all the fear of drought and bad markets, now had a face. It had 2 faces. Brooke, seeing her entire world, her reputation, her money, her freedom evaporate under the harsh fluorescent lights, completely shattered. She collapsed against the podium, sobbing. It was him, she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Marcus. It was all his idea. He said Julian was a liability. He said the insurance money was a bonus. He said Alara was too weak and too stupid to ever figure it all out. That was all Marcus needed. In the chaos of her confession, as the ranchers holding him turned to look at the new accuser, he tore himself free. He shoved Hank's son to the ground and made a desperate bolt for the side exit. The crowd surged, but he was fast. He was halfway across the hall, shoving people aside. He reached the door, threw it open, and ran directly into a solid wall of 3 people. Leo was in the center. To his left was the county sheriff. To his right was Ana Ramirez, the district attorney, her face like carved stone. Marcus, Brooke, Leo said, his voice calm and carrying, silencing the room. The sheriff and his deputy stepped past him. One went straight for Marcus, grabbing his arms and slamming him against the wall. The other walked onto the stage and pulled a hysterical Brooke to her feet. You are both under arrest, Ana Ramirez announced, her voice cutting through the silence. For conspiracy to commit fraud, felony environmental contamination. She paused, letting the weight of the next words land. And for the murder of Julian. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound I had ever heard. The deputy was reading Marcus his rights. Marcus was not listening. He was rigid, pinned to the wall, his chest heaving. He turned his head, and his eyes found mine across the room. The loving husband was gone. The concern, the charm, the entire life we had built. All of it vanished. All that was left was a cold, pure, bottomless hatred. It was the face of the demon Julian had tried to warn me about. I did not look away. I held his gaze. I lifted my hand, the one that was not holding the microphone. In my fingers was a small, dirty, folded square of paper. This, I said, my voice just for him, was from Julian. His face contorted. The sheriff pulled him toward the door. "Wait!" Brooke shrieked, her voice frantic as the other deputy cuffed her hands behind her back. "He made me do it. He forced me. I have proof. I have other documents. I'll testify. I will testify against him. For everything, I'll tell you everything." Ana Ramirez looked at her, then at me. I gave a single slight nod. The DA turned back to Brooke. "You can tell us everything downtown." The community hall emptied, but not into the street. A grim procession of cars, led by the sheriff and followed by ranchers and farmers, headed for the ranch. When Leo and I arrived, the property was flooded with flashing red and blue lights. It was no longer my home. It was a crime scene. State Environmental Protection agents, alerted by Ana Ramirez hours ago, were already there in white hazmat suits. The entire area around the well was cordoned off with yellow tape. The Apex drilling operation was shut down, its equipment seized, its private security guard in custody. Leo and I stood on the hill overlooking the chaos, the same hill I had hidden on just the night before. "It's over, Alara," Leo said, though he looked exhausted. "Legally. What happens now?" I asked. "It's all such a mess." "It's actually very simple," Leo said, a thin, sharp smile touching his lips. "Oh, Miley's pendants filing this morning clouded the title. Your evidence this afternoon, combined with Brooke's immediate confession, proves criminal fraud. That means the initial $1 transfer of the deed to Bighorn Holdings is void. It never legally happened. The land was never Brooke's. It was always yours. So, what about the Apex contract? The $15 million? Also void," Leo said, his smile widening. "You cannot sell rights to a property you do not own. The contract for the water and mineral rights was based on a fraudulent title. It's null. So the $15 million? Is currently frozen. I filed the injunction to freeze all Bighorn Holdings assets, all 6 of their accounts 2 hours before the summit. The money is locked. It will be returned. But that," he pointed down at the environmental crews working under floodlights, "is the real financial bomb?" I looked at him, confused. "They're just going to bankrupt Apex. You said it yourself." "They were," Leo corrected. "But the parent company of Apex, the real energy corporation in Panama that Ana has been digging into, cannot hide from this. By proving Marcus and Brooke acted as fraudulent agents, the liability shield is pierced. The parent corporation is now legally responsible for all environmental damages and cleanup. And do you know who they have to pay those damages to?" I stared at him. "The state, no," Leo said. "To the rightful owner of the land they poisoned. You, Alara. They stole your $15 million inheritance, and now they are going to pay you 10 times that to fix what they broke. The missing money from my accounts, the stolen inheritance, the blood money from the rights. It was all coming back. I finally understood the two-pronged attack. The poison was never just for the land. Marcus poisoned me to keep me docile, foggy, and compliant, so he could control the finances. He and Brooke poisoned the land for profit, to extract its value and leave it for dead. Both acts were born of the same cold, sociopathic greed. I walked past the deputies, past the EPA agents, and up to the ranch house. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside. The air was stale, smelling of Brooke's vanilla perfume and Marcus's cologne. I walked through the home of my childhood, now a temporary lair for the monsters who had tried to destroy me. In my father's old office, I saw a familiar book on the shelf, his journal, the one he wrote in every night. I sat in his old leather chair and opened it. My archivist's hands, so steady in Brooke's office, were trembling now. I read his familiar, neat script. It was not just a record of crops and rainfall, it was a diary of a war. For 10 years, he had been fighting off energy companies trying to buy his water rights, the same rights Marcus sold in a day. He detailed their offers, their threats, their attempts to bully him. One entry, from 5 years ago, stood out. They offered me $3 million today for the water. They do not understand. The water is not in the land. The water is the land. To sell it is to sell our blood. I will die before I let them poison this valley. I closed the journal. The betrayal hit me again. A fresh, sharp pain. Marcus had not just stolen from me. He had spat on my father's grave. He had sold the very thing my father gave his life to protect. My work as a historian, my life spent preserving the past, had suddenly converged with my future. I did not just have to reclaim the land. I had to restore it. I had to honor the archive my father left me. I walked out onto the front porch, holding the journal. The red and blue lights washed over the fields, illuminating the poison and the promise. I would use the money, every single dollar recovered from the fraud, and every dollar from the environmental damages, to heal this ranch, to purge the toxins, to restore the water. It was not just my inheritance. It was my duty. 6 months later, I sat in a sterile conference room at the county courthouse. The air was stale, smelling of weak coffee and floor wax. I was not the same woman who had stumbled out of Julian's apartment. The fog was long gone. I had gained back the weight I had lost, and my hair had stopped falling out. I was healthy. I was clear. Marcus was led in, wearing an orange prisoner jumpsuit. His charm was gone. His face was sallow and his eyes were hollow. He looked like the ghost, now. His lawyer, a public defender with a tired suit, sat beside him. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Miller," the lawyer said, shuffling papers. "As you know, Ms. Hartley has pleaded guilty, turned state's evidence, and received a sentence of 15 years. I said nothing. "My client," he continued, "is prepared to plead guilty to all fraud and environmental charges. In exchange, the DA's office is willing to reduce the charge for his brother's death to manslaughter, given the circumstances." Marcus, who had been staring at the table, looked up at me. His eyes were desperate, pleading. "Ilara, please," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Lara, just talk to them. Tell them we were happy. Tell them it was Brooke. She pushed me. I never wanted to. I loved you. I still love you." I looked at him. I looked at this stranger who had shared my bed, this man who had tried to erase me. The historian in me observed him, cataloging the pathetic, hollow shell. "Did you love me when you signed your name to the contract that stole my family's land?" I asked, my voice quiet, but it cut through the room. "Did you love me every morning when you handed me that pill? Did you love me when you signed your brother's death warrant for $250,000? His face crumpled. The lawyer sighed, ready to end the meeting. "I am not here to negotiate. Marcus," I said. I slid a document across the table. The lawyer picked it up. "What is this?" he asked. "A civil suit." "That is for Julian," I said. "I am suing Marcus's assets, what's left of the stolen money, on behalf of Julian's estate. All recovered funds will be placed in a trust for the Coyote Creek Water Toxin Fund, the fund I established last month to help my neighbors." The lawyer looked at Marcus, who just stared, uncomprehending. "And one more thing," I said. I stood up, gathering my coat. "Just for the record, Marcus." I leaned forward, just enough so he could see my eyes. "Those vitamins, I took them, but I was also taking the antidote. The district attorney's office called it controlled evidence gathering. I call it making sure the attempted murder charge sticks." Marcus's face went white. The blood drained from it, leaving a pale greenish tint. His jaw dropped. His lawyer's head snapped toward me, his own jaw slack. "You—" "What?" the lawyer stammered. "You— that voids the plea." I smiled, a cold, thin smile that did not reach my eyes. I know. Ana Ramirez is waiting for your call. His entire plea deal had just evaporated. He was not facing manslaughter. He was facing the full, unmitigated charge of premeditated murder. With me, his poisoned but very much alive wife, as the star witness. I walked out of the conference room, leaving Marcus to his fate. I did not look back. I walked out of the courthouse, into the clean, cold Wyoming air. I got into my truck. Julian's note, now laminated, was on the dashboard. I started the engine and drove back to the ranch, where the hard work, the real work, of restoration had only just begun. Thank you for listening to this story. Comment below and let us know where you are listening from. I would love to connect and share your thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and support us further by hitting the hype button so this story in this video can be heard by more people.